All right, I think everyone's here. So, welcome to the session. Um, Thank you for making it. So, I'm looking forward to seeing your presentations. I turned the class over to you. And well, a couple things before we get started here. Let me do a share. I want to show the schedule here. So, some of you requested that we do, that they go first or second or whatever. So, this is the order of presentation. We start with Gautam, then Jacqueline, Luke, Aditya, Ethan, Sunithra, Anushka, Gisela, Aaliyah, Andrew Nupur, and Yamini. And I want to keep the presentations to about 10 minutes. So we might have a question in between, but I want to keep to the schedule so we can end by 4. If anyone has to go sort of out of that order, please let me know. I want to be able to accommodate people, but that's based on the information you gave on the form. So, great. So, let's start with Gautam. Are you here? Are you ready? I guess. Okay. Can I go a little later? Okay. Yeah, we'll go later. Let me know when you're ready. You can put it in the chat. So we'll go with number 2. I don't know if Jacqueline wants to go first or.
Yes, that works for me.
All right. Go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll be discussing my project called Open Housing. Um, sorry. So the problem that it's addressing is that prospective renters today have limited resources to get honest information about the housing market that's increasingly competitive. I found a study that apartment occupancy reached an all-time high of 97.6% at the first quarter of 2022, and rents for new leases were up 15.2% nationally. But that's not to speak for more populated areas such as major cities like New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, and especially college towns. For example, at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, students had to camp out in record numbers outside of leasing offices 10 a.m. the day before the leases opened just to be able to get one of their first come, first served leases. Just further proving that, like, because there's such a demand for apartments at this time, they didn't have the opportunity to tour the apartment, get information. It's very necessity based that they just need a place to live and they have, as renters, have no real grounds to stand on. So my open source solution is to provide an accessible and transparent open house and open source experience to the prospective renters. So this will be a website where current renters can contribute by posting their genuine apartment reviews that aren't filtered by the company that owns them, and they can upload photos that aren't staged, showing what it is like actually living in the apartment and discovering issues. For example, like cabinet space, you might on an initial tour in an empty unit not be able to know, like, is this enough to fit my pots and pans? But in an actual real review from someone living in the unit, you can learn that information. And then additionally, renters receive the power back in the housing market to view the true conditions of an apartment, something that's not edited or filtered. And then they can help combat the competitive pricing in this way by being able to see the real conditions. So here's a mock-up of my project. This would be a mock-up of what the website looks like. As I said before, it's called Open Housing, and there's different ways that you can search. For now, in like kind of this preliminary step, I said you can search for like by bedroom, by bathroom, and then by price, because those are some of the important features that they might look at. But for, like, further expansions, on the, like, top right, you can see, like, the company it's owned by, whether or not it has a gym facility or security, pet friendly, if there's a parking garage attached. Those might be features that people might also wanna search by that could be added later on. And then in my mockup, I made it for my current apartment. So it says the stars, the number of reviews, prominently, obviously, the address and things like those information might be important, but also I included utilities that I haven't found often on real apartment websites. And then in the description, when somebody would add an apartment to the website, I included stuff directly from my lease. The information about the beverage cooler, the refrigerator, the number of beds, and things like that were not provided on my apartment's website when you look at like the company JSM website. So this could be direct information from the lease, or possibly I don't know like the legal behind, but the actual lease itself could potentially be like attached. But again, I would have to check on the rules without putting that information out online. And then one of the most important aspects I think is the um, like renter reviews. So there's two reviews listed where they can put their exact comments, and these might be attached to a photo if they're complaining about like a lack of covered space or like mold around certain areas. They can include exact photos of where that might be. But most of all, there's the photos so people can click through and see that. As for managing the project before the launch, I think the most important steps are these four. First off, is develop that project timeline so that way everybody who's working on the project or wants to get involved can understand the fundamental steps and the timeline for the project in order to keep them motivated and have a goal in mind. And then website development, of course, the website that I showed, that's the main hub where everybody's going to interact with it. So working with web developers and other programmers to get that up, because then through that people can interact, see the project, understand the project, things like that. Also, the submission form for community members to share their details about the apartments. Again, this isn't information that can necessarily be like researched online because we want authentic like renter reviews on their current living situations. So getting that form out, and a lot of getting that form out is in developing the initial community. If I were to start this project, I would begin it in the Champaign-Urbana area with University of Illinois students to promote the project. So that's where I would target most of my resources. As for project launch, every year in the fall, there's a housing fair that's held on campus where a bunch of housing companies go. So I would work to partner or at least be featured at the fall housing fair in order to spread awareness about the project. I think it would also be nice as like a take home gift for people to remember, as like a housewarming gift for early contributors to keep them motivated to keep interacting with the platform. Then I would also want to record the event for asynchronous viewing for people that may not be able to make it to the event or who are looking from abroad, just to keep them connected to the project. And that can also be used for social media content to help promote the project further. And as for keeping the community engaged, I think it's really important to release a monthly newsletter to keep contributors informed about changes and also like involved and invigorated with the project. I would also like to host more like open housing events and giveaways to continue to target the University of Illinois students and inform them about the project. And then something that I think is really important is to measure people who collaborate, whether on website development or with adding apartments, measure their impact and reward them with different badges. I showed in the mock-up that two people had different like badge levels, but to start, I would suggest these four from like bronze to silver. So bronze would begin with like just over one contribution and just joining the network essentially. And then platinum, it might be adjusted at the beginning because the project wouldn't be around for a year. So I wouldn't want people not to be able to achieve that if they wanted to. But platinum is basically consistent contributions to the site. It could be on the review end, it can be on monitoring, it can be in any of the aspects. And then most of all, to maintain the community engagement, I think it's to keep open channels for people to give feedback and contribute to the project in different ways. On the sustainability side, I think the most important thing is, again, growing the database of apartments and reviews that are available because that's going to make the site more impactful. So I'd really like to streamline that process as soon as like the initial launch gets up, get feedback about that, and be able to help people make the uploading process a lot easier. Also, to develop straightforward entry points for new community members. I understand that not everybody has like a programming background. So if it was in like community outreach, reaching out to friends to get them involved in the project. That might be another entry point, but at every point, I want people to be informed about how they're contributing and be able to see the different paths for them to work in open housing. And then establish an agile project workflow. As we talked about, we don't want it all resting on like one point of failure on one person. So those loyal members that may be the gold or the platinum member could be able to verify a new apartment being added to the site just to make sure that those are in place and at least the baseline first posting is accurate for the most part. And then other people can help monitor the reviews just to meet like community guidelines and standards. And then, of course, to keep it sustainable, I want to encourage features to be added or removed. It might be important to know if there's a laundry in unit. It might be for college students less important to know about if there's a parking garage attached to the unit, if they don't even have a car on campus. So it can kind of tailor the things that were shown in like the upper right part of the mock-up. And I think another cool feature could be searching from distance from a campus building. I know that a lot of like bioengineers have classes in Everett. And so it might be important to like search by apartment close to whatever like campus building they frequent the most, or if they have a club meeting there frequently, it might be important to search by that. And then to expand the project further, I think it would really be interesting to partner with apartment companies, just like Google, how you can pay for your ad to be featured higher on like the search response page. I can see that if this project were to get bigger, many apartment companies will want their apartment to be listed higher. So in order to give back to the community while doing that, I would reward site users with different discounts, maybe on leasing apartments if a certain company wants that to be there. If they want to search by apartment company, that could be like another feature that the apartment companies would have to work with us for. Additionally, since this project is beginning for like university students, it would be good to collaborate with universities because students won't live in dorm housing, most of them, for their entire college experience. So, in order to recruit new people, it might be important to talk that this school works with open housing and they want you to know that your student will be able to have affordable housing later on after they leave the dorms. And then finally, scaling the project beyond the Champaign-Urbana area. Um, Obviously, we have a big campus here, but this can be useful at any college campus or for non-college students when the time comes. So I think it's just important to maintain a community focus and understand what features are most important for all of those communities. For students, it's probably being affordable and knowing for parents that the conditions are safe and things such as that. But if we're going into like more urban cities, there might be other things that are more important to those people, like accessibility to like subways or public transportation, their workplace, issues like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Any questions from anyone? Yeah, so I think yeah, I think that's very good the way you've laid it out. I can see a path towards like building something out of that successfully. The one thing though that you pointed out was the legal issues of some of the things. So that's something you'd want to kind of work out. But I think even if you didn't like put leases online or whatever, that would be very informative for people. Renting is very low tech in a lot of ways, or at least it's been traditionally. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. So next we have Luke. Are you ready to go, Luke?
Yep.
All right.
Can you see my screen clearly?
Yes. Yes.
All right, sweet. So basically the project that I am coming up with is called Audition, which is a platform where you can build your band with ease. So to give some context, roughly 50% of the US population of adults report having played an instrument or singing, which is a pretty insane number considering that there's hundreds of millions of people in the US. But however, some, which is very hard statistic to find, is that they may want to start a band. And there's varying levels as to the I guess, extent of which they want to proceed with a band, whether it's just recreationally or whether it's to actually try to turn it into a commercial type deal. But with my background also, I grew up in music and instruments and singing as well. A lot of people, a lot of the friends that I had wanted to start bands, but a big difficulty was that not only finding people that were qualified, but people who were in the specific genre that you wanted to be a part of, whether that's country, whether that's musical theater, whether that's rock, something along those lines. So it's not just about knowing how to play an instrument, but also the interest in the genre that you play as well. And so kind of the idea with Audition is that it would be a platform for discovering artists to build a band. The way it would work, it'd be more like very similar to a social app where you would create a profile of your work, say playing instruments, singing, or music editing or whatnot. You can display your band preferences. And what I mean by this is kind of like the genre that you play. Um, it could be particular artists that you listen to, just the general domain, and what you're also looking for too. Say, for example, you're a singer and you want to find a lead guitarist and a piano player, right? You could specifically mention that that's what you're looking for. Or if you're a piano player or a percussionist, you can find a singer, for example. Additionally, you can request users to audition by covering a song or demoing. So rather than just having previous work that you've had, the idea with Audition is that it's kind of like if you find someone that you think would be qualified, but you want kind of an extra layer of understanding whether they're able best suited for that genre you're playing, you can request them to play a song that's already been made before or something along those lines, just so you can get a better idea of again their ability to perform in that type of genre in that position. Additionally, these could be optional in the sense of it would be like virtual, or you can even meet up in person. And also, it could, sorry, I'm blanking. You could also match up with two people. Say, for example, you have two people in your band. You can kind of create that pairing and also find someone else to do the audition as well. And then you can message one another and connect according to the auditions and reaching out and whatnot. And the general purpose of Audition is to promote creativity output through music. And I'll talk about this a little bit more later when we are explaining more of like the general purpose of platform like this, regardless if it's music or not. And our target audience would be again musicians wanting to start a band, whether you're an instrumentalist or a vocalist. Ideally, we'd just start at college campuses. And this is just a number that I've seen. So I'm pretty active on UIUC subreddit, and I've seen at least like maybe 30 posts regarding to starting a band, and there are maybe like 10 to 15 comments within that. So like that's just a rough estimate. So maybe about like 300 to 400 people just on Reddit wanting to at least initiate some sort of band creation. So I'm just pulling that number from what I've seen and not like actual statistics out there. But considering that that's a representative sample, you could argue that there are at least a good number of people on campus wanting to do this, and then eventually expanding to all users 18 plus worldwide. Our strategy would to promote create opportunities and human expression. In particular, this is kind of what I was mentioning before with the idea of Audition. So again, because when creating a band, that's more of like a group endeavor, right? So you have multiple people on your team. And what we're trying to promote in terms of an open source platform is modification for group-based endeavors. So whether that's just creating a sports team, whether that's a band, or extreme adventures, just some sort of recreational activity that requires a group, but also a specifically qualified group with particular credentials, because it's not necessarily open for everyone, right? You don't want just some random classic piano player on your team or on your band when you're a rock band, right? So it's kind of the point of building a platform like this is to spread the idea of human expression and opportunities that are skill based. And then again, this is focused around music. So the people that would be around this community would be music enthusiasts, whether that's a particular genre, whether you are a instrumentalist or a vocalist or whatnot. And yeah, and then I mentioned briefly Apache License 2.0. I'll go into this a little later, but again, because this is an open source platform, we want to have some sort of licensing and some sort of protection for distribution. And the reason why I chose Apache License was because it's great for commercial purposes. So we would be able to have some sort of sustainable ecosystem for scaling, but also have other developers who want to expand again towards other group-based endeavors like sports teams or extreme adventures to create software very similar to it, so long as they have the license to do so. But yeah, and it's very compatible with other open source licenses as well, and it's good to combine. It's great with combining code from other projects as well. Our code strategy, we want it to be web-based. So like many other social platforms, they're all very web-based. And in particular, I chose React.js because one, I have experience in front end, and that's one I'm most familiar with as well. But it's also really great because eventually you could expand to mobile with React Native, and you could create cross-platform applications with that as well through Android and iOS. So that's just an idea for future scalability. It also comes with a ton of libraries and resources available, and the dev community is very supportive. And there's a lot of resources and support. So that's kind of the reason and strategy I chose for that. And then Node.js is also another JavaScript integration that you could use. So it's very web oriented, which is nice if you have familiarity with front end development and web development too. Version control would be through GitHub. And the reason why I choose GitHub is because it's the most popular one. And there's a lot of different integrations you can use through other applications. And kind of an example of that would be Notion, which is a new project management and file hub that we briefly went over in class. But this is kind of my go-to strategy for project management and coordinating assignments and whatnot. I guess to go a little bit more depth with Notion, so you can create roadmaps, you can create assignments for people, and to bring back the integration aspect, Notion can connect with hundreds of external applications that are really useful to kind of integrate into a single hub, such as Google Drive, GitHub, Slack, just to name a few. So it's a really great, it's a really great management platform that I think is would be good for scale and integration if you're willing to scale to other applications and third-party apps as well. Community. So again, I mentioned that this is a music-based platform. So music connects people, right? When you find people who share similar music interests with you, it's really exciting, and you can pretty much dive into deep conversation for hours if need be. So this would be built with other music enthusiasts, and I have a few friends who are also, they're like part computer programmer, part instrumentalists too. So I know those are definitely common, and I think this is more of a niche type of field or subject in terms of development because it integrates music, right? And so I think it would be a really cool and engaging type of community because music expands to all sorts of genres from all across the world. So it's very open and very supportive in that aspect. Additionally, kind of events that we could, try to create are hosting open mics or mini concerts for the community members locally, whether that you are locally or we can create maybe country or region-wide ones. That would be really great. I also like hackathons or musicthons, right? Kind of an integration between a hybrid hackathon where you're creating these types of applications, but also integrate some musical aspects to it, like you're coding with a band in the background or something like that. I don't know, just things like that to integrate the community aspect along with the love for music that is pretty much the core of these communities. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I had for audition. So.
Well, thank you, Luke. That was very good. Do we have any questions? All right, yeah, that's great. And I'm particularly happy to see that you covered the licensing regime. That was, I think, very good to speak to that because that's an important part of managing a lot of these assets and interactions and things. So you envision this to be useful, like to people on other campuses or people within the campus who want to use this to do their own band search or find people for their band.
Yeah.
So you just distribute it, and so you can use these tools and be part of
Yeah.
the community.
Yeah, you would be able to modify according to like the recreational thing you're trying to curate for, through the general infrastructure of what we're building, but also have protections for us and what our community is building as well.
We're very good. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we have Aditya. Are you ready?
Yes, Professor.
All right. Share your screen. You can go ahead. Ready.
Are you guys able to see my screen? I think that's
Yep.
a yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I've spent about 4 years in the logistics world. So I kind of noticed how interconnected everything is in this world when it comes to logistics and supply chain. So therefore, that's one of the things that I'm definitely passionate about, and I decided to make my open source project on this topic. So I kind of named my project as the Open Loggy. It's named after there's like a meme page called the Chubby Loggy, which like pokes fun at all the things that are some of the issues that come across as a logistician. So I just kind of play on words over there for that. Um, so the project goal is essentially I wanted to create a platform where people working in the logistics world to come together, learn, share, and collaborate. So it's gonna be something of a kind of like a Reddit platform. However, it's gonna be completely open source and accessible to everyone, regardless. What we're gonna try to push for is, since the logistics world is so interconnected, I want to have it accessible around the world rather than just having like restrictions within different countries and stuff. And also, we're going to try to implement working open in the project management aspect of it too, just because people have various experiences and it'd be great to apply their lessons learned throughout their projects. So some of the featured tools that I'd like to incorporate in this project would be something like a forum, like Reddit itself. So there's different uh, subreddits, channels like supply chain logistics management in Reddit itself, which are pretty good. But I have, I guess, kind of a habit to get into what's it called, a rabbit hole when I'm going through Reddit. So this would be kind of like a little bit more streamlined, where it'd be more focused towards your issues that you're dealing with, and it would be kind of organized within different channels, how we have in Slack. Um, and then also, I'd like to incorporate an AI bot that would help us find answers a little bit quicker. Um, Ideally, I'd like to incorporate an open source chatbot. I know Mozilla recently invested, I think, $30 million in an open source version of the chatbot to compete against ChatGPT and Bard. So it'd be cool to kind of incorporate that and kind of focus more towards logistical questions, and it would just make the search process within the website a little bit faster too. And then obviously, you can further develop that where the chatbot can be used to connect one user with another user and so forth. Um, but I would also kind of have like a Discord server for that portion of it, so I wouldn't have the chat aspect of it within the same website. And then in the future, maybe try to incorporate like a job board to connect, or you know, connect various industries within that website. Eventually, maybe applying something like a LinkedIn Learning, but more focused towards the logistics aspect of it, and then a mentorship program where you can connect with other professionals, um, mentorship slash networking. All right, so the project management aspect of just creating this project would be. Oh, excuse me, I think I clicked something. It's to initially start off on a Discord server. I think Discord is a pretty good platform to, get everyone like working together in the beginning. Through the Discord, we can have various channels which would be led by project managers, and then they would essentially use a distributed and asynchronous model to connect various professionals around the world to work on the website itself. Kind of wanted to build the website on a GitHub repository so that we can work on it asynchronously around the world. The project will be open to anyone who wants to contribute, kind of like how Mozilla um, does their open source work. And then also the communication plan for this would be mostly updates within the project channel itself in the Discord based on upcoming deadlines or on a monthly basis. For community building, I figured later on, once we have the website built, we could kind of have like highlights for certain forums that are having or gaining a lot more interest. So, for example, if there is big supply chain issues coming in coming in like the natural gas and fuel aspect of it, maybe those forums are going to start heating up. So maybe highlight those. Also, create like a mailing list based on people's interests. So based on how people are interacting with certain forums, they'll be getting a mailing list curated with the content that they're interested in. Potentially, maybe get into having some social media highlights. So having presence on social media to kind of build that network, or I guess just publicize the website itself. Additionally, I know Kaggle does a lot of competitions for like people in the information realm. So maybe sponsored competitions on this website for logisticians to you know come up with creative ways to answer logistical problems that currently are being faced in the industry itself. And then finally, incorporate like aspects of that community curve to give users the flexibility to choose their level of involvement. So maybe I remember in the curve, if you just want to barely just use it for getting information, you can do it that way. Or if you want to be super involved and you want to be part of the building process, you can be, higher on that curve. So I wanted to kind of break it down in like 4 phases. First phase would be the main aspect, which would be the forum-like structure and the mailing list based on involvement. I think that would be the bare bones of the website itself. And then later on, develop it more on the Discord server with a chatbot, with the AI chatbot, so that would be a little bit more easier to find things around. And then finally, it would get into like building job boards and training libraries. This will take a lot more time, or maybe coordinate with other learning websites such as like Coursera or LinkedIn Learning, and maybe have like a cross-platform connection for that. And then phase 4 would be something that's ongoing, so we could constantly keep improving the website as we go forward based on the interests and needs of the people. Funding would be mostly focused on community-based donations. So the more you donate, maybe you get more incentives. That's more often on an individual level, so you might gain access to different forums or early access to certain competitions or information that might be coming out. Other than that, we'd also seek sponsorships. So those will be something like how we want to have those community building events. Maybe a logistical company like AGCO or Cargill can sponsor a logistics competition, and that way they get a little publicity for themselves, but also a way to build a community as well. And then finally, the end state will be to essentially build a community of logistician and supply chain professionals, so that we can have a website or a platform where we can all communicate with one another. Since it is a very interconnected profession, I think that's the end goal, is to connect other professionals and answer each other's problems. And finally is to have it stay open source and capable for sustaining over the years to come. And that is essentially what my project would be for the open loggy.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from anyone? Well, yeah, thank you, Aditya. That's very good. Yeah, I was very happy to see that automation made an appearance, that you are interested in chatbots and some of this other stuff. So I think it's a very good way to manage some of these processes. selective automation. So thank you. Next up is Ethan. Are you ready? All right.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So my project is basically a surfing database with a website and app combination. The reason why I named it Big Z is from the movie Surf's Up, where Ezekiel teaches the main character Cody how to surf. And this is actually a photo of me surfing at home at Pleasure Point in Santa Cruz in the background. So, next slide, if this changes. Okay, so the problem is that there is currently a lack of a free open source surfing website. The competitors that do exist, for example, Surfline, most of the data and the useful information for surfers are protected behind paywalls. And while that does help Surfline fund themselves, it's really difficult for those who don't want to pay a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription to pay and get access to really useful information that allows you to find the best waves. There's also very difficult to find historical data for surfing. Finding historical data, what looking back in the months, what did it look like last April? What do the waves look like now? Really helps surfers find the best spots and the best waves. So who will use this? It's publicly available, but mainly the surfing community. I want the users of Big Z to basically get the best access to the best waves. And currently there's kind of a lack of that. The Surfline and the other competitors, the way that they get their information is either through webcams, which estimate the height of the waves and then relay that back to the website, which is really expensive, hard to set up, and requires collaboration with the local community. And sometimes they even go to the local government and ask them for a handout or some kind of subsidy in order to allow these cameras and these estimating tools to be set up. So the access will be provided through an app and a website. The website will be updated every minute. Database calls are extremely expensive in computing power and also relaying that information back. So we want that website to be the most updated and the most possible, simply because people looking through their apps, we want them to get up-to-date information, but not necessarily calling back to the database every single time they open an app. And refresh their screen. That's very expensive for the server costs and also very expensive for hosting. So the database will be through MySQL. We want the community to be really involved, since the funding that we we plan to have from community. So it's going to be a nonprofit that hosts a lot of this. We want it to be open source where everyone can look at it through GitHub. Most of our code base will be through GitHub, but we also want to have some licensing, which we'll talk about later. So sustainability, we want to have a process that's fast, easy to use, it's accessible. We want people to be able to submit and update new surfing spots, but also to contribute to the community. So the way that we do that is through ranking user contributions, the quality of your user contribution, and the number of contributions that a user or a coder has submitted to the base that have been approved by the community can improve their rank. And with a higher rank, we estimate that a higher rank allows the more qualified, the more verified users to verify new users and build out the website in a more sustainable manner, rather than paying someone a lot of money to build certain tools. So we also want to create updates for new surf spots. There's always new surf spots being found every single year. Africa, the Middle East just came up with some great ones, and we want people to be getting out there and to be submitting these new great waves for people to go. Another way that we want to encourage community involvement is to have verified users. I mentioned that we have user rankings to build out features and also include hackathons, where the hackathon might be to create a new tool for Big Z and to basically move that forward and maybe implement that in the future as a result of a hackathon winner. So why choose this project? The surfing community needs much more accurate forecasting, historical information, and up-to-date information. A lot of websites currently don't offer that kind of precision. It's usually an estimation based off of historical trends or what the cameras estimate, which more times than not are very inaccurate. So this is an example of an implementation. You would land on a search bar, a starting screen, and you would type in what surf spot you're interested in. So for example, I surf at Pleasure Point a lot. This would be an example. So a bunch of spots would show up with Pleasure Point being one of them. And then you would click on that, and then it would lead you to the current conditions at that spot. So this is going to show the wave heights, the wind speed, the wind direction, and what the tide is and what it looks like in the future. Additionally, we want to include what kind of equipment you should be wearing. So this is called a 3/4 wetsuit, which allows people to get in the water without frostbite. So code access, we want it to be transparent. We want it to be available on GitHub. Version control will also be hosted on GitHub. And we want it where anyone can look at it and download it for their own purposes. However, it won't be available to publicly modify in the main Git, as that is the responsibility of those within the community to verify. And additionally, any individual use copies can be modified to anyone who chooses to obtain them, but we want to start licensing it with a FPA general code license, which permits the use, the modification, and the distribution of code for personal and educational purposes. This prevents and prohibits companies from using the code commercially without significant modifications to the code. And the reason why we do this is because we want everyone to be able to use our code. We want everyone to be able to see our code, but we don't want companies to start profiting off of the hard work of the community. So it allows anyone to use, copy, modify, merge, or publish, but it doesn't allow anyone to start selling it as their own. Visitors to the GitHub page can browse different versions of the code and look through them from individual copies and basically kind of rank or base their decisions off of the contributions that anyone modifies to the code base. We believe that the community believes that the more open the project, the better. And we want to be really transparent and open with anyone who wants to use our code. In conclusion, I'm done.
Thank you, Ethan. Any questions? Comments? I think it was very good the way you interact. You sort of dealt with the limiting the code to certain individuals, limiting it by the license so that people can't, larger concerns can't co-opt your project, and then talking about, verifying data, verifying site data, and connecting all of that. I thought that was very good. So thank you. That was good. Next up, we have Sunethra, but is Gautam ready to go? Do you want to go or do you want to go later? Okay, after this one. So Sunethra, can you go now?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay. All right. You can share your screen.
Yep. All right, 1 second. Okay, so I am working on an open source healthcare analytics tool. Like that's kind of what my project is based on. I just have a personal interest in healthcare and healthcare analytics. I've worked in companies with healthcare and healthcare analytics, so I've just had a lot of experience and find it really interesting. So the overview of this software is that it would be a tool that is used to analyze healthcare data and extract meaningful insights. So this tool will be used for like population health management and healthcare cost analysis, and can be integrated with EHR systems for better data management. And for those who don't know, EHR is just like just patient records and just online health records. So just a quick background on healthcare analytics is that it's the process of analyzing current and historical industry data to predict trends, improve outreach, and even better manage the spread of data. And then one of the quotes from the University of Pittsburgh
I don't fully remember the source right now. It's like by discovering the associations and understanding patterns and trends within the data, big data analytics has the potential to improve care, save lives, and lower costs, which is kind of what's really important. Lower costs. Healthcare is extremely expensive, and to be able to improve lives and also lower the cost is kind of the goal of my open source project. And the other importance of healthcare analytics is that the collection of data in healthcare has been more streamlined in recent years, but that helps improve day-to-day operations and better patient care. There are sources right now that kind of are implemented within EHR systems, but there are limitations to that, and I'll go over that later. And so it's just used, it can be used now for better predictive modeling. And instead of just looking at historical information or trends or current information, we can look at data sets to track trends and make better predictions. We are now able to take these preventative measures and track the outcomes. And just to be able to do that with a specific set of data can be extremely useful for the future, and also just useful for current day issues that people are finding themselves in. So the current open source analytics tools that I've kind of looked into right now is that OpenMRS and KNIME. So OpenMRS's like main platform is that they maintain a platform that countries and implementers use to create a customized ERM system in response to the needs on the ground. However, the limitations of the software is that it's not a complete electronic medical record, and it does not currently have the functionality that many commercial electronic medical records have. And then KNIME is currently a software that is used to create and productionize data science using one easy and intuitive environment, enabling every stakeholder in the data science process to focus on what they do best. And while that's a little general, this is specifically for pharmaceuticals. And however, the limitations of this platform is that it has a steep learning curve and memory limitations because of the amount of data that used. It sometimes doesn't fully remember the information. And so the one main thing about healthcare analytics is that privacy is extremely important. A patient's privacy is the top priority when creating an open source tool, and doctor confidentiality is extremely important along with HIPAA rules. And ethical data analytics is also a priority. Oh, the O is missing also, but and unauthorized people should not be able to access private data. So when creating an open source tool, it's really important to have all of this just important, and like to keep track of all of this information. And information cannot be shared without consent, especially if we're talking about patient information, if we're using that to track, healthcare costs, or even just patient information to see the trends. And these are my references. But basically this tool, I think, is just there to go over the information of like kind of just explaining the costs, because the hospital bill, a hospital stay can be extremely expensive, and then kind of using the research that doctors gather together and creating a tool that can be made so that you can predict outcomes of a patient a little better.
Thank you. Yeah, that was very good. Okay. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, I think we talked about that in class, how there's this huge issue of data privacy around healthcare. So that's definitely, you're getting into that quite a bit. So that's good. Thank you. All right, Gautam, are you ready to go?
Yeah, you just see my
All
screen.
right. Yes.
All right. So this is knowledge base. All right. So what is knowledge base? Knowledge base is a platform that offers a wide range of educational resources, including books, lectures, notes, videos, quizzes, and assignments for different academic levels. These resources can be modified and tailored by users to meet their unique teaching and learning requirements, making it a flexible tool for instructors, learners, and self-learners. So what is the problem here? So it basically democratizes the learning process and removes obstacles to education, such as high textbook costs or restricted access to educational materials. And so, what is my solution? So, my solution is creating an open source software with a wide open source website with a wide range of contributor work together to improve and develop the content over time. Because of the platform's adaptive, adaptability and customizability, educators can also adapt their lessons um, and learning objectives, etc. So, who is my target audience? So, I want to target all kinds of learners, including teachers, students, and lifelong learners. And I want to create an intuitive user interface to make it easily usable for all. But my main user audience will be K-12 educators, college professors, and independent learners. And so the way I'll be doing this is with tools that will be available for all, which includes creating and sharing course materials, managing assessments, and working with coworkers and students. And we also have textbooks, videos, and interactive simulations. So what is my strategy? So I'm thinking to either use the general public license or the Apache license, which is to ensure that users have the freedom to use, study, modify, and distribute the software. The main difference is that the Apache license does not mandate the derivative works to be licensed, which is something that I'm working on deciding strategy to use. And the next is how do I grow the community? So I have different types of ideas. One is meetup and online forums are two important ways that the platform promotes a sense of communities. So things like webinars, hackathons, virtual conferences, meetups, and online forums would be a great way to create a community of lifelong learners. They might meet up with people who are interested in the same subject matter, or even develop a community of programmers who want to contribute to this platform. And so, to develop the community of programmers, I'll provide clear guidelines on how to contribute, maintain a list of open issues, and recognize and reward contributions. So to make it clear for the programmers, I would have to have coding standards, code review processes, documentation requirements, and some open issues. So now I'll be going into features, which will be the bulk of this software. So they're discovery tools, and so subject, grade level, and research types are just a few of the filters that users can use to narrow down their search results. Then we have rating systems to see um, what resources are actually good. So platforms, user ratings, and review system provides users with useful feedback while ensuring that high quality resources are available. This helps other students filter which resources are good and bad. And then we have content creation features for teachers, students, and other users. They can easily create and share their own educational resources on the platform, which includes like text, images, videos, uh, and interactive tools. And we'll provide some design and templates and tutorials, things like that. Then we also have group features, as I talked about, like forums. So we can have people join groups, take part in forums, and share resources and their learning experience with others. And then a new one I've added is like the chatbot and API integration. So we can integrate, like the AI chatbot to act as like a personalized tutor for those who want it. So next is sustainability. So first, we're gonna have to have a strong, financial or coding base to do this. So prior to anything else, solid financial plan should be established. So uh, the way I want to do this is to collaborate with other businesses, possibly charge a fee for premium users with like premium tools, or obtaining donations from charity. I don't aim to make this like a profit organization, but as always, you need like a little bit of money to run some kind of software website. So I also want to make it adaptable. So the platform should be created with adaptability in mind, especially with new technology changes. So adding new features and functionalities, growing the user base, or forming partnerships. So these ensure that the website continues to stay at the top and people are constantly adding to the features and abilities. So what is the future and how do I see this grow? So I'm hoping that we can anticipate seeing a change in how education is provided, absorbed, and shared in the upcoming future. So especially with accessibility and inclusivity in education. So we can anticipate seeing more people work towards their professional and personal development, and also an emphasis on community-based collaborative learning approach. So I'm hoping that'll become more lively and dynamic. I hope that people can kind of interact with each other and bounce ideas, and also bring out different viewpoints and knowledge. And so, yeah, I hope that knowledge base will have a profound impact in the future in education. So here's like this little chart that I've created, kind of showing the different things I talked about. So with open source, brings in the customization, new additions, features, new content. We have many different features, books, video quizzes, assignment grading tools for for all education purposes. Then we have ways to grow the community, which will be like webinars, hackathon, virtual conferences. And then, as I said, my target audience is all kinds of learners, hoping to get like K to 12 students and high school. And then sustainability, partnering with organizations, premium membership, or looking for grants and donations, sources. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. Any questions or comments? Yeah, I like how you did, you talked about the commercialization aspect and licensing. Nice mix of things there. So looks like a pretty good project. And at the end, you had this kind of maturity model um, built in. So that's great. Thank you. Anushka is next. Go ahead and share your screen. Gotham might need to not share his anywhere. Okay.
Can people see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So hi everyone. For my term project, I decided to figure out a project plan for developing an internship review board for UIUC students. So to give a little bit of context on why I wanted to pursue this project, I've noticed that there's just a lack of honest, helpful information regarding the internship search, and also the actual content of internships themselves. So for instance, job descriptions tend to be too general, like they'll list, like for example, for like a tech internship, they'll list like a ton of technologies, or they'll be really vague or just generally not reflective of what the actual role is like. So oftentimes we tend to get job descriptions that list off a bunch of technologies and languages, but then once you get into a role, you'll find that like you're just using like one or two of those skills. So I feel like that can like put people off from even applying to the job. So things like that were the reason I felt like, oh yeah, there is just not a good place where people can find out information regarding internships. And with UIUC students specifically, I feel that this is especially true for the research park we have here, because a lot of those companies are smaller and lesser known. So just generally, there's going to be a lot less information online about the company culture and the work culture, and like what the day-to-day responsibilities in those roles will be like. So I came up with just kind of a problem statement to base like everything that I was going to go forward with from all these problems that I noticed. And it's that there's no singular comprehensive resource for UIUC students to discuss internship interview processes and also work experiences. I think that this has a lot of untapped potential, and it could be a super valuable resource for students all across campus and across many different disciplines. So I knew my first step before even outlining project goals and also figuring out project timeline stuff. I knew I had to do like a little bit of research on what is out there currently. There are active internship discussions on Reddit forums, Discord, and Glassdoor. And all of these tend to be really disorganized and messy and confusing. I've been on all three of these personally, and I've found them either really hard to use or just generally like too overcrowded. So like for example, in Discords, a lot of people will be trying to talk over one another, and it's very hard to like have specific information organized and like readily accessible. Also, I feel like there is just a really strong lack of clarity regarding the nature of certain research park internships because, again, a lot of those companies are very small or like not as established as some of the bigger companies, or they're just like fully like student run startups or things like that. And I've kind of done like a little bit of like I've just like chatted with people on campus about this idea that I had for this class, and um, I found that students across many disciplines, like including advertising, business, computer science, like civil engineering, bio-e, and so on, they wish that there was a platform dedicated to sharing transparent internship information, and that all of this was in one spot and that it was organized. So my mission was building a site where students can evaluate completed internships and share insights on their interview processes or also the work that they did. And the way I would go about doing this is I would first make it so that students would have to verify that they are a UIUC student. So once a student goes to sign up, they have to do it through their UIUC email address, and then they'll receive a passcode that lets them like access the site and like log in. But that is just kind of more of a security thing to make sure that random people aren't just putting their internship evaluations out there when they're not even connected with the university. And with this site, I wanted to have a few different criteria for internship evaluations. So that would include ratings out of 5 stars for the work-life balance and the culture of the company. Also, a rating that's just like for the general enjoyment of the internship. I also wanted a place where students could list their major. So, for example, at least within information sciences, because it's so interdisciplinary, a lot of times students are kind of going for multiple types of roles. So I feel like that can be like confusing itself. So I think having that there could kind of give people an idea of, oh, like a computer science major went for this role, like maybe I could go for it too. Or, that seems like really tech oriented. Maybe I should go for something more on the UI UX side. So things like that. So I feel like major is like a pretty important criterion. And then also, of course, I would want to have user-generated descriptions of their experience. So whether that's them talking about the experience that they had on the job itself or during the interview process or both, those are definitely both really valuable pieces of information that students can have like when they're going to apply for different internships. Because oftentimes companies are not really clear about the interview process. And this would just be very helpful for students who want to find a good match for what they want to do. And yeah, in addition to that specific mission, I have obviously a few goals in mind. So the first one is stakeholder engagement. So I need to identify and engage key stakeholders and basically establish effective communication channels and protocols to make sure that all stakeholders are informed and involved throughout the development process. That also does definitely tie into the community building aspect. I want to make sure that the relevant parties, like students, employers, and professors are all like informed and all know about this platform. And yeah, because this platform is for students and it's going to be built by students, I really want to make sure that I'm servicing their needs the most. And in addition to that, I definitely want to employ the agile methodology, which we've talked about in class, which kind of involves continuous improvement. So the development process never really stops with agile because there's like a few different steps involved, including like planning, designing, testing, releasing to a select few of people and then getting feedback and then doing the entire process over again to make the best product possible. And kind of tying into that, I definitely want to be able to use my community to get feedback and then implement their feedback. Again, like this is a platform that is created with the students' interest in mind. So I want to really make sure that I'm getting feedback from them, and that feedback is going to be super valuable to the development process. And lastly, another goal of mine is to have just a really solid project coordination and management throughout the entire process. So everyone is kind of on board with the different steps going on. So a few different key pieces go into the development. First is definitely going to be project scoping. So that involves defining the purpose and the objectives of the internship review board. And then obviously, like, there are so many different things that I could do with this platform, but I would definitely think that I would have to start off small. So just think about which features, should be included on an initial launch, and then think about which ones are just kind of nice to haves. And another key part is worrying about funding. That is huge. Like, I would definitely have to plan out and kind of figure out, like, ways I could fund this project, because if I can't get that, then like the entire project is pointless. And then in addition to that, stakeholder identification, which I touched upon briefly, but yeah, it's super important because I want to be able to get stakeholder input. And then lastly, I would definitely like to utilize an issue review board on GitHub. As we touched upon in class, I feel like it was just a very organized system. And so on. For research and planning, I would want to look at existing review forums for design and functionality ideas. And then another important piece I recognized was like legal and ethical considerations. So we have to make sure that we have compliance with applicable laws, regulations, and ethical standards. So that might be related to privacy, confidentiality, and data protection. And then the actual implementation is going to involve thinking about accessibility and UI/UX principles. And then I would also want to test on a user group first to get their feedback. And then, yeah, like, again, just keep iterating through the process. And the other pieces of development include monitoring. So I know a lot of people do use Google Analytics software on their businesses and on their websites to gather user trends and insights. And I think that would just really help with the continuous monitoring and evaluation of how well the site is performing. And in addition to that, as I touched upon, we can get like user-generated feedback, the data from Google Analytics, and also stakeholder input, which again is so critical. And from those, we can make the necessary adjustments to improve the effectiveness. And the last piece, I think, is transfer of ownership, and then also kind of thinking about like scaling. So I would be graduating this semester, so I would need students to come in and step in once they've been trained to keep the project going and keep it growing. And also just kind of planning ahead, I'm thinking about future growth, and that could involve scaling to other college campuses outside UIUC. And that's it.
All right, thank you. That's very good. Do we have any questions or comments? Right. Yeah. One thing I liked was like identifying that the current conversations, like on Discord, are very disorganized. They need to be sort of made relevant and reorganized. That's something we talked about, but it's hard to do. You run your own Discord, for example, you constantly have to curate it. So curating the current discussions is actually quite important too. So that's a good highlight. Thank you again. Gisela, it's time to present.
Yes. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So this is a tiny logo that I created for this project. It's called Pet Shelter. So this idea stems from the fact that I'm a huge pet enthusiast, and I have been looking into like this problem of just not knowing where to go for adoption. And so this entire like platform is probably like, it envisions to create an online platform that connects like a potential pet owner with their desired pet of choice without like having to deal with the overhead fees of an adoption center, basically. And then this project, so first I'm going to talk about like problem identification. So these are the two problems that I saw. So existing pet adoption process can be decentralized and unorganized depending on like where you live and also what shelters are available around you. Often those who are looking to adopt need to go to a physical shelter, and this can be hard if the shelter is like miles away from where you live. It can also come with like a lot of overhead costs, and commute can be a barrier, as I've mentioned before, for those who don't live near the shelters. And so the objective of this pet shelter project is basically to develop like an open source web platform for pet shelter organizations to connect with potential pet adopters and to improve like the entire process in general. So I envisioned this project to have to run like with a team of developers and designers, and also have someone coordinate like the project management, maybe like a PM, and then also implement the agile methodologies to develop this entire web application that also meets the requirements of all the stakeholders, basically. And then I first identified like the user segmentation and also what their pain points are. So the target users will be like twofold: potential pet owners who are looking for a pet to adopt, but also those who are willing to donate, not donate, but like put their pet up in donation for adoption. And then I also identify like the pain points. So maybe cost can be a pain point for a lot of people, and also inexperience. So many people are not experienced with the entire process, and this can be their first time adopting a pet. And so I brainstormed like several features that can be included in the project. So it would be nice to have the user workflow to be really intuitive, and I thought like these feature selection can help with that. So first, I want several filters in the website. I want the users to be able to browse based on the type of animal that you're looking for, based on a specific like detail. For example, is there a specific color, breed, or gender that you're looking for? I also want the entire enlisting process to be a lot easier, and have someone contact an enlister through like a legitimate mode of communication, basically some communication platform that is trusted. And also we want to have like user ratings to basically improve trust between the two parties, like the adopter and also the person who's putting their pet up for adoption. And these are just possible extensions. So if I'm talking about like the list of features that I thought that I spoke about, that can be like part of the phase one of the product, and then this can be like phase two. And these possible extensions are probably like having a round of verifications in the form, so just to make sure that everything is safe and this person is trusted, and also maybe like add more filters based on the location of where they're based in. So maybe they can filter based on proximity to where they live, so that the commute can be more realistic. And also right now, maybe like have a feature for the enlister to update like when something is no longer available, or probably like a pet has been adopted and you want to take it off. We want to have a feature that makes that process easy. So talking about strategy, so this is what I'm planning to do for the execution. So first of all, we want like continuous development. That's why I chose Agile project management. And also I think it's great to have sprints. So the PM can probably like assign sprints with weekly deliverables. And I think a great task management tool for this is probably Jira, and we can also use Confluence as the note-taking platform, because I think they can easily be integrated to one another, and you can also embed like sprints from Jira into a Confluence doc and also integrate GitHub very easily. So for the version control that I choose is probably GitHub, because it's very easy to set a repo up. It's free, and also it's most commonly used out there. And I've also thought about having the entire like communication platform like through Discord or Slack, just because this is very like you can filter based on channels, and that can like streamline the communication, and it's also very commonly used these days. So all these communication can be held, for example, to monitor progress, identify and resolve issues from like the previous week, and also plan for the next sprint. And in terms of the technology stack, I'm thinking of using like modern web technologies. So React is something that is commonly used, and not only that, it's also dynamic. It's very easy for something that is built on React to be accessed through a browser or through a phone, and you can also create breakpoints for iPads. So it's very easy to basically migrate something that you create through React to like different screens. And so that's why I chose this technology stack. And then, as mentioned before, the version control that is probably likely used is GitHub, just to manage everything and collaborate very effectively through this version control. And in terms of the community, I think working with a lot of RSOs or NGOs that are animal related can be very useful. Just having them as beta testers, and then gather like a lot of feedbacks, and maybe like have iterations of improvements, keep testing with the same RSO and teams to build like potential partnerships. And I think this is like a great way for the product to grow, especially in an early stage, and also getting the community involved. So this is like what I envision the website to look like. Is just something that I designed, but basically something like we want to have like a search bar. We want to have like an easy button where you can enlist a pet, and maybe it can take you to a form where you can list things very easily, and then just browse through like the pets through a carousel or like grids. So yeah, that is for my pet shelter project. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Yeah, I like the way you address feature selection, and then you address the strategies for setting up the project and managing it through like a lot of the assets and everything. I think that was very good. All right, thank you again. And any questions or comments from anyone else, or before we move on? Okay. All right, thank you. Next is Aaliyah. All right. Yeah, I can see your screen.
Awesome. Sorry, I left myself on mute there. So my project basically is an alum network for my sorority. Oop, it's not going forward. There we go. So as an introduction as to why I chose this particular project, I've been really fortunate to have been a part of a technical science sorority during my college experience. And as a graduating senior, I've been introduced to steps to becoming alum. So as an active member, you're given so many occasions to stay connected with each other, but alum don't have those same opportunities. And seeing what is available after I transition from active to alum has inspired me to create a website and community network of which is easier for all of our alum to stay connected. So, some background research to aid my plans here. The current state of the Alum Association, to the majority, is not satisfactory for its users. I happen to take some time to talk to some of my favorite alum members from my current chapter and ask for their experience, what they would wish for, what they wouldn't. And a lot of them wish for a way to reconnect with graduated members, but also to be able to meet new people within the chapter that have graduated prior or are new alum. And those in interviews also expressed wanting to simplify the process of being an alum and participating in sorority business. And those things can be like voting for elections, volunteering, submitting applications or requests to the national board, whatever you might possibly need. And so that leads me to some of my goals. The main goal of the site is to help the alum members keep in touch and make new connections within our alum network. With this goal, we would pursue developing features such as profiles for each alum member, groups that they can join based off any hobbies, such as biking or crocheting or just whatever, or location that they're at, so that they've moved to a new place and they want to meet new people. It could also be for social events or professional events sanctioned by the sorority itself. And then it would be awesome if they'd be able to message and chat with each other to catch up or make plans personally, anything like that. And then a secondary goal would be to be able to access resources that are important to alum, like our monthly minutes, or be able to submit applications or proposals to our national board with ease if they need to contact them for any reason. So for development, within the scope of this project, we would just start by defining the project as a whole, like who would we need this project for, why would they need it, and where can they use it. So for who, we wanted this project to be for sorority alum that want to connect with the sorority, like I said before. For where, it would be accessible through our sorority national website, working with our technology and design chairs and our national board, with direct permission and supervision from them. For when, we would want to establish a project timeline, an agile referred to as a completed cycle. That's reasonable, say 2 quarters, maybe 6 months, with multiple sprints that have achievable goals within that time. As for why, we determined that with talking to our prospective audience, and we'll continue to use them as a sounding board to show our demos in order to check if we're on the right track. And that also meshes really well with Agile methodology. And then for our budget, we determined that it's probably going to be minimal to zero, just because it's on a volunteering basis through the sorority, through our volunteer chairs, like the technology and design chairs. And it doesn't necessarily require any purchase of intellectual property or anything like that, because we're already using what we have through the website. We would want to set up a supplemental budget that includes unexpected expenses to prepare for in case we wanted to use Adobe Analytics or anything like that that might cost for a subscription. But this has to do really well our expenses too, because it's a voluntary basis. A lot of them work full-time jobs, and so that's why the timeline is also stretched. The next step would be planning, which is a little bit further information of the initial background. We would want to define our website goals and needs for the rest of our team to determine what design and functionality that we might use, and then the content that we want to place on the platform, along with like the choice of the platform, and then finalizing logistics like our front end development, back end development, any kind of database management that would be necessary, especially for storing information and posts. So all of that would have to be discussed in the planning period. After that, we would jump into execution and the launch stage. During this, we would make use of the planning stage to first use our design to build what we want the website to look, and then in functionality be able to follow through with what we want to do. We would likely split a lot of the stages into multiple 2-week sprints, possibly such as like the creation of a homepage, profiles page, the group page, 404s, contact exact, things like that. And then after finishing our sprints, we would test the website by first creating and publishing our own initial content, but also by demoing to our user base that I interviewed in the background research stage. And after passing those tests, we would want to jump into actually putting it out there. And then during the maintenance phase, which is following after we would hopefully have a successful launch, we'd work to just monitor the website as admin, performing regular updates and providing as many upgrades as possible, basically emphasizing continuous improvement as much as possible, as dictated through the Agile methodology. And then lastly, we would opt to transfer ownership to the next tech and design shares, as terms are up typically between 6 months to a year time, and then they switch to a new position. And then we would celebrate a job well done. So I believe that is just about everything. That's just some resources up here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And so any comments or questions from anyone? Yeah, I like the way you covered the development cycle and how that would proceed and get those well thought out. So, very good. Thank you. So next up is Andrew.
All right. All right, so the screen share is working.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so the project or the problem I am seeking to address is with one of my RSOs. On the national level, a pretty significant amount of effort is wasted on inefficient administration and just trying to clean data, figure things out. So the project would be notionally a web app for the national staff to collect this mandatory paperwork and to also standardize said paperwork that's collected. That can be also plugged into our existing web infrastructure. This would be as lightweight as possible to minimize confusion. It's already very difficult to try to communicate the most basic ideas down the chain. So the simpler the better, or the more intuitive the better. And I'm aware it's not the most exciting concept, but it is a project that I'm hoping to get done this summer, but that depends. And yeah, it's a currently notional project, but I do intend to actually make it. So the purpose is to, again, reduce the amount of hours spent cleaning the data, trying to get the data in the first place, etc. I'd say probably close to 80% of the time spent with national staff is just getting people to submit paperwork and then trying to process the paperwork, because everyone has a very different idea of what a personnel roster looks like, to the point where there's no real progress or change in terms of fixing existing problems, because so much effort is just put into cleaning the data and then trying to compile it all together. Also, open source would help because there's a pretty significant history of distrust of national staff. I think that's turning around this year, but at least in the last 2 years when I've been semi-involved at that level, there was a lot of conflict over, like, where's the money going? Why do you need this stuff? So imposing standards without being open would probably lead to skepticism at best, backlash at worst, and there has been significant backlash in the past. And additionally, this would make it expandable to meet any future requirements, especially to try to keep this alive. So target audience community would initially be on a very small scale, just this current RSO, the national staff specifically, but hopefully this would be flexible enough to be expanded to both parent organizations and similar organizations. I'm unsure of how much actual technical expertise there is in this RSO nationally even. So the actual like community management initial approach would be pretty top down via the current IT infrastructure. But if traction is gained, or more people adopt this, then it could be democratized. With code-based management, the initial deadline for all of this paperwork tends to be about mid-November. So at least for initial release, before then would be preferable, which also facilitates a sprint over the summer, which I will probably discuss in a later slide. License-wise, MIT license, mainly because there might be potential OPSEC hazards with just paperwork being submitted, like standards, etc. So just in case of OPSEC standards, MIT has the most flexibility. Documentation-wise, markdown files on GitHub is what I've personally always tended to do. And in this case, copies being kept on private servers would be a good idea because things tend to get lost during turnovers. And initial code base would be on GitHub because of its general ease of use and the fact that most people tend to be familiar with it already if they're doing open source or software projects. For progress and feedback, additionally, just because of the small scale issues and emails would be sufficient, at least to start. And on national scale, there's meetings, so requesting feedback at those meetings would be useful. Tracking progress via Trello. And then with actual communications between people developing this, it would depend on the scale again. If the scale is currently like only within the RSO, then existing communication channels would be sufficient. If it is significantly expanded, something like Slack would probably be the best. And with the approach, an Agile Scrum approach would be preferred, just because people have time over the summer, but people don't really have time over the school year generally. So the only real chance of progress would be for a quick sprint over the summer. Hypothetical expansion. This concept is currently pretty basic. I haven't fleshed out the actual feature set yet beyond the very basics of what I would like it to do. But if it gets adjusted or reorganized, we could expand it. And it really would just depend on what problems come up during or after implementation. And for sustainability, significant documentation would be required just because I've done projects at this level before in organizations. And what I found is because it's an annual turnover for staff and such, usually things don't get passed on between turnovers and projects die. So there's no real long-term projects usually that survive more than, say, 1 or 2 iterations. So just having significant documentation would enable if someone in the future wants to pick it up, they could. And a potential temporary solution to that would just be the first product should just be as complete and functional as possible. So in case development is in fact dropped, it wouldn't be a significant issue. And that's my slideshow.
Thank you. I think it was very good. Any questions or comments? Yeah, I think the very good project, like description and how you approached it. One thing I'd be careful about, of course, is like the coordinating people in them doing it according to the old ways, and then introducing source. So I mean, it's great, but it's like you have to be mindful of like how people are willing to adopt a new platform or approach. So, I mean, that's just a challenge that we all have in whatever project we're proposing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this will actually get cleared through the chain when I pass it up, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Very good. So next up is Nupur.
Yeah,
So,
I can share my screen.
Yeah. All right. See it. Thank you.
It's good. Okay, so for my project or like my paper, I'm planning to create a website And I'll just go more into it. So basically, the goal is going to be to create a website that connects like consumers to sustainable products and businesses. And these are just some statistics. So it's just shown like recently consumers are more interested in sustainable businesses, and about 75% of sustainable goods sell better online. And also, like 2 out of 5 consumers buy organic or natural products. So that's kind of just like a background and overview of why I think this would be something interesting to focus on. And then going into more of my idea. So the overview is like the website will have like a directory of sustainable businesses and products, and more of like a platform for consumers to also share their ideas. And basically, the idea overall is just like creating the website to connect consumers to sustainable businesses near them. And then users are going to be like any consumers who are interested in like environmentally friendly or ethical business practices and products. And just like other statistics are showing that like more people are willing to pay more for sustainability, and consumers also value transparency, which could be made clear through this website. And then just like the principles that I'll be using in this class, that we learned in this class for the paper, will be like version control. So like creating different versions of the project file. So if I make changes, it'll be easy to keep track and also be able to revert back to something that a version I had before. Also like working open, so working with others and seeking continuous feedback and utilizing tools like Slack or Discord. And then also like stakeholder management, so identifying all stakeholders and managing expectations and contributions to avoid conflict. And then for challenges, I see there might be some technical challenges that come with building a website and making sure that you're good with like website development tools, just user experience overall as well. Like you need to ensure that's easy to use and has a nice interface so consumers will actually want to use the website. And then content creation overall, just keeping it updated, having high quality content that's engaging and will attract more users. And then for next steps, just generally would be like building the website. Obviously, I wouldn't actually do that, but just write about how I would. And then there's like sources to use to build a website, and then testing and launching the website, and just monitoring it and updating it to make sure everything works well, and to see if consumers are actually visiting the website. But that is mostly what I had for this project. So
Okay, that's good. Thank you for the overview, and I think you hit the challenges and the principles pretty well. So thank you. Okay, so we have one more. Actually, we have Yamini, but I noticed that Ben here is here. So are you wanting to present today, Ben?
I believe I selected next week to present. I'm here today just to check it out, check out other people's presentations first.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you'll be next week. I'll just make sure you're on the schedule for next week.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So yeah, Yamini, you're our last presentation.
okay, yeah. Let me just share my screen real quick.
Right. See your screen.
Okay, so I'm just gonna walk through like kind of what my paper is gonna be more about than just like the actual open source tool itself. So my idea was a mind mapper, which is an open source mind mapping tool that allows users to create and organize their thoughts and ideas visually. And like it'll include products like features such as collaboration, tagging, and like exports of like different file formats. And I was thinking of making it like an app so like people can use it on different devices as well. I think it's just like a nice like mental like health app, as in like people can like journal as well, and like also like have like different places just to put their thoughts. Because as someone who like, I know like notes apps on the phone and like the MacBook, like you can kind of like type it out and see everything, but you can't really have like a lot of visuals on it. So I want something like that as well for like people just to put their notes and like their thoughts and ideas. So like this is like an overview of like what I'll have in my paper, which is like an introduction, a literature review, methodology, features, case studies, implementation, future developments, comparison with like different competitors, and conclusion and like references. So the introduction would like include like a background on like mind mapping and just kind of like where it comes from and stuff. and then like an overview of like the project in general and like the app, like the purpose of like the app, and like different like research questions like what are like the features and like how does it compare to like other mind mapping tools as well. And then like in the paper there'll be like a literature review on like the history of it, like the benefits of mind mapping and like the types of mind mapping, and like a comparison of like mind mapper with like other mind mapping tools. And then for my methodology, I would like explain the research design and like have like data collection, like data analysis of like the actual like app, and like that would like be made up data obviously, but just like how like I don't know how consumers would react to it and like how different people like the app. And so for some of the features of Mind Mapper, I want to have like a really like user-friendly design just because I think like that will make it accessible to like a lot of people. And I also want to have like collaboration tools because I think like Google Docs and everything, like I know like the notes have has like ways to make shared notes, but that glitches out a lot of times and a lot of people can't really like see everything. So I think a combination of something like Google Docs and the Notes app with like different visual aids would be a really cool project. And then I have implementation, like how like to install the app and like where it would be available, like Google Play or like the App Store. And then I have like future developments, which is like just how to like expand from the app, like maybe having like other like different features, having different updates, and like having other tools, and also making sure there's like places for like user feedback so people can still like grow and the app can continue developing. And then I would have like competitors, like how it compares to like Google Docs, like different notes apps, and just different like other visual aids, like where you can put like your thoughts, kind of like stickies on the MacBook and everything, and like a place for like user reviews and everything so people can review it. And then I would have my conclusion, which is just like the summary of everything and how like the app is designed and how the different principles of the app, and then references.
All right. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like the slides are very nice. And so you're going to go through some of those in more detail on the paper. And yes, I mean it's a very good idea. It's very, I mean, I think you can see the niche there where you might be able to put it in. You've identified that quite well. So, you might also think about maybe, as we mentioned in the session, a lot of people talk about licensing and things like that. So that's something. In fact, everyone should think about that. Licensing, I think that's come up a lot in the session. We also had a lot on project management, like specifics. How do you manage all these different ways of collaborating? And sometimes that springs from the practical aspect of the project. Sometimes it's not that necessarily, but you have people working on it and you need to communicate things. So I think, yeah, we had a lot across these talks. We had a lot of common themes. And, I'll leave it up to you to see where the common themes are and maybe what would inspire you in the future to, if you want to drive this project forward, to think about those things as well and how other people have approached them. Did we have any questions for your meeting or comments before we move on? Okay. So we're about 15 minutes ahead of our schedule, so that's good. We've had a lot of good talks. I think everyone did a good job. Everyone's laying out their work. They've been thoughtful. They've addressed a host of concerns. Like I said, there's no requirement to hit certain issues, but I want to make sure that people have hit the issues that they need to hit for their project. So this will be, of course, in the final paper when you turn it in. So the final paper is due May 11th. So it's Thursday of finals week. So you have a bit of time to work on your papers. We'll have another session next Wednesday. So that's for the rest of the class who aren't in this session, except for Ben, who's going to present that. And then I think we have a longer list of people for that day. But so your papers are due May 11th. I said that we were going to have, you would turn it in like PDF format, but also I'll send out a template for publishing it on GitHub. So I have like a style template for that, which I will send out. And then I think that's about it. Otherwise, I mean, I'll be sending up a follow-up email. So we have like the final information, everyone gets reminded what that is. So any other comments or questions before we go? Okay, if not, then thank you for attending and look forward to your papers.
Thanks, Professor.
Thank you. Do you have any questions before the final submission of the paper? Let me know.